The story of Hachiko is far more than a touching tale about a loyal pet. It stands as a genuine cultural phenomenon, one that reached directly into the heart of the Japanese nation during an era of rapid modernization, and eventually became an international symbol of devotion that seems to reach past the limits of ordinary human understanding. At the center of this story sits the real history of an Akita Inu, a dog whose daily ritual of waiting slowly turned into a decade-long, silent testament to a love that outlasted time, separation, and death itself. Origins and early years, from Akita to Tokyo. The story begins on November 10, 1923, on a farm near the city of Odate, in Akita Prefecture, a region known for its harsh winters and its ancient breed of large working dogs. The Akita Inu itself is one of Japan's oldest native dog breeds, developed over centuries in the mountainous, snow-heavy terrain of the northern Tohoku region, originally bred for hunting large game such as boar and bear, and later valued as a guard dog and a symbol of status among the region's landowning families. The breed's thick double coat, powerful build, and famously independent, dignified temperament all trace directly back to the demands of that harsh northern environment. The Akita Inu puppy born that November was given as a gift to Hachiko Ueno, a professor in the agriculture department at Tokyo Imperial University, now known simply as the University of Tokyo. Professor Ueno lived alone and had a genuine passion for animals, keeping several dogs over the course of his life, and the arrival of the puppy brought him enormous joy. The puppy's name, Hachiko, came from the shape of his paws. When the professor first examined him closely, he noticed that the front paws curved slightly inward in a way that resembled the Japanese character for the number 8, hachi. The suffix ko, in this context, served as an expression of deep affection and respect. In this way, a small puppy received a name that fate had apparently already marked out for immortality. Hachiko grew up in the professor's home in the Shibuya district, at the time still a semi-rural suburb on the edge of Tokyo, a patchwork of farmland, modest houses, and a rapidly expanding rail network that was only just beginning to stitch the area into the wider city. An unusually close emotional bond quickly formed between the man and the dog. Professor Ueno personally looked after the puppy, fed him, took him along on walks, and even allowed him to sleep near his own bed. For an Akita Inu, a breed known for its independent, proud, and highly selective temperament when it comes to attachment, the professor became the single center of Hachiko's entire world. The ritual at Shibuya Station. By 1924, Hachiko had grown, and a daily routine had formed between him and his owner that would eventually become legendary. Each morning, Professor Ueno walked to Shibuya Station to catch a train to work at the university. Hachiko accompanied him all the way to the station entrance, then calmly turned around and walked back home alone, trotting past the same shop fronts and the same neighbors each day, an ordinary routine that no one around them yet had any reason to think would become extraordinary. At exactly 3 in the afternoon, the time the professor's return train was due, the dog would appear again at the ticket gate of Shibuya Station. He sat down on the wooden planks in front of the entrance and waited patiently amid the flow of hurrying commuters, unbothered by the noise, the crowds, or the unfamiliar faces streaming past him. The moment the professor stepped through the doors, Hachiko greeted him with obvious joy, his whole body in motion, and the two walked home together side by side. This ritual repeated itself day after day, in every kind of weather. Through pouring rain, through the punishing heat of summer, and through winter snowfall that blanketed the wooden platform where he sat. For the station staff and the regular commuters who passed through Shibuya every day, the sight of the professor and his dog had become a familiar and comforting part of the city's daily rhythm, the kind of small, quiet detail that gives an ordinary commute its sense of continuity. The tragedy of May 21, 1925. That harmony lasted only 16 months. On May 21, 1925, during a lecture at the university, the 53-year-old Professor Ueno suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. Doctors could do nothing to save him, and he died right there at his workplace, with no chance to send word home, no final walk back through the station gates, and no way for anyone to explain to the dog waiting for him what had actually happened. That same day, as always, the 16-month-old Hachiko arrived at Shibuya Station at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The train arrived, passengers streamed out onto the platform, but Professor Ueno never appeared. The dog remained at the station well into the evening, refusing to leave, scanning every face that passed through the gate. It was only after darkness had fallen that relatives and the professor's gardener finally managed to coax him home. Hachiko had no way to grasp the concept of death. For him, only one fact existed: his owner had not come, which meant he needed to keep waiting. A decade of solitary waiting. After the professor's death, Hachiko's life changed abruptly. Ueno's widow could not keep such a large dog in her new living situation in Tokyo, and Hachiko was passed first to relatives, and later to the professor's gardener, Kikusaburo Kobayashi, who lived not far from Shibuya Station. Despite the change of household and the care of his new keepers, Hachiko remained faithful to his one true owner. Every morning and every evening, he made his way back to Shibuya Station on his own. From 1925 to 1935, across 9 years, 9 months, and 15 days, the dog appeared at the platform each day at exactly the time the afternoon train was due. The first years of this vigil were genuinely difficult ones. Vendors around the station and many passers-by had no idea why the dog kept returning, and he was often chased off as a nuisance rather than recognized for what he actually was. Local boys sometimes teased him and threw stones, and street vendors, mistaking him for an ordinary stray drawn by the smell of food, occasionally doused him with water to drive him away from their stalls. Hachiko suffered bites from other stray dogs competing over the same territory around the station, endured illness and rough weather with no shelter beyond whatever corner he could find, and over time one of his ears came to hang permanently from an old injury sustained in a fight with strays elsewhere in the neighborhood. Despite all of this physical hardship, and despite having no real reason left to expect his owner's return, he returned to his post without fail, day after day, year after year, through an entire decade of Japanese history that saw the country change around him far more than he ever seemed to notice. From stray dog to national hero. The turning point in Hachiko's story came in 1932. Hirakichi Saito, a former student of Professor Ueno's and the founder of the Association for the Preservation of the Japanese Dog, noticed the dog at the station. After learning Hachiko's story from the gardener, Kobayashi, Saito was deeply moved by the animal's loyalty. Saito went on to research the dog further and discovered that Hachiko was one of the few remaining purebred Akita Inu left in Japan at the time. The breed had fallen into serious decline over the preceding decades, weakened by uncontrolled crossbreeding with other dogs brought into Japan from abroad, and further reduced as some owners, facing economic hardship, allowed their dogs to breed indiscriminately or simply could no longer afford to keep them. Saito's growing alarm over the breed's survival, combined with the emotional force of Hachiko's story, gave his 1932 newspaper article an urgency that went beyond simple sentiment. In October of that year, he published the piece in the Asahi Shimbun, one of the country's largest newspapers, under the headline, "The Story of an Old Dog, 7 Years Waiting for His Deceased Master." The article caused an immediate sensation. The story of a dog embodying the very highest ideals of loyalty and selfless devotion touched the hearts of millions of people across Japan. In a country working through economic hardship and rapid social transformation, Hachiko offered a symbol of steady, unwavering devotion that resonated far beyond the story of one dog and one man. Shibuya Station became something close to a place of pilgrimage. People traveled from across Japan simply to see faithful Hachiko, or Chukan Hachiko, in person. Station staff began looking after him directly, local vendors fed him, and passers-by stopped to offer him affection. In April 1934, a bronze statue of Hachiko, created by the sculptor Teru Ando, was formally unveiled at Shibuya Station. Hachiko himself was present at the ceremony, watching quietly as a sculpture of his own likeness was revealed to the public for the first time. Final days and passing. Years of life on the street, combined with old age, took a genuine toll on the dog's health. By 1935, Hachiko had grown noticeably weaker, suffering from both heartworm disease and cancer, his once thick coat thinning, his movement slower with each passing month, though he continued making his way to the station whenever his strength allowed it. On March 8, 1935, the body of the 11-year-old Hachiko was found on a street in Shibuya, not far from the station. He had died alone, having taken what turned out to be his final steps toward the place he had waited for his owner for nearly a decade. News of Hachiko's death plunged the country into genuine mourning. Newspapers ran the story under somber headlines, and hundreds of people gathered at Shibuya Station bearing flowers, many of them strangers who had never met the dog in person but had followed his story for years. A formal memorial service was held, attended by Buddhist monks, marking the end of a vigil that had, by then, become something closer to a shared national ritual than a private act of mourning. Legacy and symbolism. After his death, Hachiko's remains were cremated, and his ashes were buried beside Professor Ueno's grave at Aoyama Cemetery in Tokyo. After a full decade of separation, owner and faithful dog were finally reunited. Hachiko's pelt was preserved and used to create a taxidermy mount, which remains on public display today at the National Museum of Nature and Science in Ueno Park, Tokyo. During the Second World War, the original bronze statue at Shibuya Station was melted down to supply the country's wartime industry. In 1948, though, the son of the original sculptor, Takashi Ando, recreated the statue. Today, the bronze figure of Hachiko at Shibuya Station stands as one of the most famous meeting points anywhere in the world, and remains the defining symbol of the district itself. Every year on April 8, a memorial ceremony is still held at Shibuya Station in Hachiko's honor, drawing Akita Inu owners, dog lovers, and curious visitors from across Japan and abroad. Dogs are often brought to the statue dressed for the occasion, and organizers lay flowers at its base in a small, quiet echo of the same devotion the statue itself was built to commemorate. The tradition has continued for decades, turning a single dog's private grief into a shared, recurring act of public remembrance. Hachiko's influence reaches across several distinct areas of Japanese life and beyond. Within Japanese culture, he became a defining embodiment of giri, the deep sense of duty and loyalty that runs through much of traditional Japanese social ethics, a concept that, in Hachiko's case, took the unusual form of a debt of devotion owed not by a person, but by an animal, which is precisely what made the story resonate so widely. In cinema, a Japanese film released in 1987 and an American remake in 2009, starring Richard Gere, carried Hachiko's story to audiences well beyond Japan's borders. And the sheer scale of public attention his story generated is widely credited with helping save the purebred Akita Inu from disappearing entirely during the 20th century, at a time when the breed's numbers had fallen to genuinely precarious levels, threatened further by wartime shortages that made keeping large dogs difficult for ordinary families. The connection between Professor Ueno and the wider world reaches even further than Tokyo. Ueno had studied agricultural science for a period at what is now the University of Rhode Island, in the United States, and in recognition of that connection, a second statue of Hachiko was later placed on that university's campus, thousands of miles from Shibuya, linking the story of one loyal dog in Japan to a small corner of American academic history. The story of Hachiko has never lost its relevance, even a century later, because it points to something simple and enduring. A pure, selfless love that needs no words, no guarantees, and no reward. It stands as a lasting reminder that loyalty is not an obligation. It is the highest expression of attachment a living being can offer another.